the start, and I'd like to invite you for the first panel. The topic is momentum in women's ice hockey and women's sport. And the lecturer is Angela Ruggiero. I'd like to introduce Angela. She's a former US hockey player and Olympic champion. She is co-founder and chair of Sports Innovation Lab, a data company that enables brands and sports properties to build more effective sponsorships, improve targeted advertising, and enhance fans' experiences. Built on observational, transactional, and deterministic fan data, the Sports Data Cloud is evolving how organizations use data to understand their customers and acquire more of them, starting with sports and entertainment. Angela Ruggiero. And this discussion will be co-moderated by Amrit Gill. Welcome to the podium. Amrit is an award-winning producer, reporter, and host, specializing in coverage impacting diverse communities. She is the first woman to be on Hockey Night in Canada's Punjabi edition, and is also a producer with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Prior to working in sports, she helped lead national and local news teams at Rogers Media, covering everything from crime and politics to breaking news and international crisis. She is now taking her experience and helping organizations elevate their platforms to connect with global audiences through creative strategies and content as the co-founder of Tell a Story. Amrit Gill.
Can I take this one?
Yeah.
Hello. We're going to start in a little bit, but I wanted to just say ahoy. I wanted to say sasrikal. How is everyone doing this morning? Oh my gosh, a little bit louder like the audience last night. How are we doing this morning? Good. And where is everyone from? Yell out your country.
India.
Oh, hello, my people. I have the Swedes over there. Where are you guys from? Hungary, nice. I was there last year. Where is that table over there from? Amazing, amazing. So my name is Amrit. I am from Canada. It is my first time being in the Czech Republic, being in Prague, and it has been such an exciting time because the city is full of history. It is full of art. The people are so kind as well. But as a Canadian, it is a little bit difficult for me to be here as well, because we all know what happened in 1998. The Czechs eliminated Canada and won gold on the Olympic stage. So I'm going to need your support while I'm up here. But as we know, sport can bring us a lot of pain, and it can also bring us a lot of joy. So I'd be remiss to not mention what also happened in 1998, and that was the introduction of women's ice hockey on the Olympic stage. And my friend Angela was there as well. She was a part of the inaugural team for Team USA, who took home a gold medal. So please give her a round of applause again. Thank you. Can you guys see us over here? Do we need to move this over? Yeah? Can we get a friend to move this table over in the meantime? Yeah? Amazing. Actually, while we're doing that, when I was in the audience yesterday at the game, there was a lot of chants going on as well. It was Canada, Finland, Canada, Finland. I almost stopped paying attention to the game. So while we're getting this moved, can I say Canada and you say your country? Canada. Oh, perfect, amazing, easy. All right, Angela, so the panel is entitled Momentum in Women's Ice Hockey, and you felt that in 1998, stepping on that world stage, on the Olympic stage. How is that momentum a little bit reminiscent of what we're experiencing today in women's hockey?
Yeah, thanks for having me first to the IIHF and for allowing us this time to talk about the women's game. Yeah, I was a little girl that grew up in sunny Southern California. There were no hockey players, let alone female hockey players. I think when I started playing, there were a little under 5,000 girls and women registered in the U.S. We're over, I think, 85,000 today, Katie. Yeah. It's taken off. I think 98, I was lucky enough to be on that team. I was the youngest member of that team, historical first time. That opened the eyes to the world, literally, that women's hockey even existed. I think unless you were in hockey and you had someone that played, you didn't really realize that women played. In the US, again, I grew up not seeing girls and women on TV. I idolized the LA Kings. I wanted to play for the Kings when I grew up. So I think Nagano really, the biggest thing it did is give us that first big platform. And even though there had been world championships up until that date, there's nothing like the Olympic stage and the visibility that you got there. So, you know, we were all over the news. We were on the Wheaties box. Everyone, I think, recognized, you know, the first thing they said is, do you have all your teeth? You know, there's this notion to, you know, what a hockey player looks like. But it absolutely changed the trajectory of the sport.
Mm-hmm. I want you to finish the sentence for me. Hockey needs to have the women's game grow, because if it doesn't...
I think if women's hockey doesn't grow, we'll stagnate as a sport. Mm-hmm. I do a lot of work with my company. How do you grow sport globally? How do you keep sport relevant? And you know, there's a few ways you can do that. You can do that by moving your sport into new geographies, which I think we're always thinking about, what new country can we go into? You can do that by leveraging technology, making sure fans all over the world can see hockey, can see these worlds, can see the Olympics. But you can also do that by opening up your doors to a new gender, right? And not that women's hockey hasn't existed, but really saying we want half the world's population to participate. And because we all know if they participate, all of the great things that happen because of that for the individual and society, but also the game grows and stays relevant. I mean, I think at the end of the day, having played, but also spending time on the commercial side, sports around the world are investing heavily in those, I think, 3 areas. Like, can we get to more geographies? Can we make sure, you know, technology allows fans to come in the door? But can we grow our participation rates? And that, to me, is gender is like the #1 way you can really open your doors. Look at football, look at soccer, look at these more global sports. So yeah, it's so obvious to me, but I think sometimes in the hockey community, women's hockey gets treated almost as like second-class citizens, and there isn't an active strategy to bring women's hockey to the sort of the forefront.
Mm-hmm. But there is an appetite, and as you mentioned, technology plays a role, government support plays a role. We each have our individual powers as well, but what do you think is required from a fundamental perspective to truly make sure it's, you know, equal in terms of, you know, gender representation?
Yeah, so the easiest is at the top to create strategies and mandates. I'll take the US, where I'm from. The government in 1972 enacted a law called Title IX. What that was a law to ensure equal education in schools that were federally funded. And sport was one of the ways that the government saw education should be delivered. So a byproduct of that law was actually equal. If there's funding going to a university, men's and women's sports have to be brought up equally. So it opened the doors to participation in all women's sports. And if you follow, you know, the medal count in the US now, it's gone through the roof. And that is a direct government policy, I believe. It's all the training that you get from the universities and the exposure and honestly, the aspiration of the parents who sign up their daughters when they're young because they know they can get a scholarship and get a free education. Yes, they'd like them to play pro or the Olympics, but it really is that parent that sees that as an opportunity. So I think at the top is the easiest and quickest way to get there. But this room, I spent 8 years as a member of the International Olympic Committee. I was a board member there. And we did all kinds of studies about how do we reach the athlete, how do we get athletes inspired, the coach. At the end of the day, the coach has the most immediate, direct effect on the success of athletes. And so if we're talking about participation, yes, while laws and rules would be the quickest way to get there, that struck me, and you know this, and I know this from my own experience. I had when I was a young girl, a coach that believed in me, parents that believed in me, a coach that would open doors for me, right? The only girl playing on my team, and having to defend that they had a girl on the team. Oh no, she's pretty good, don't worry. He went out of his way to take me to practices when my brother, my parents would prioritize my brother's hockey. And so I think about the success of my career. Yes, I was lucky that the Olympics had arrived, that the World Championships had arrived by the time I was of age to play. But it was the coach, my coach Scott Plumer, who really, I think, opened the door for me to even get seen and exposed by the national team.
So just on that note of what coaches can do, so does everyone know when you're a child, you know what you like and you know what you don't? You like chocolate or you like vanilla, and you're going to be very vocal about it. That is your impulse voice, and you're very definitive as well. But as you get older, outside actors, the world, adults, organizations, they start influencing your impulse voice. And that sometimes changes your identity a little bit. But you've managed to live a life where it's been very true to who you are. What helped you keep your impulse voice intact from a coaching standpoint?
Yeah, I think I found hockey. I love hockey. I mean, I would say it's my first love. I got on the ice when I was a 7-year-old, and I was like, oh my God, this is the best sport in the world. I want to play till I'm, older. I want to play in the Olympics. Actually, I wanted to play in the NHL. So I found the right sport. My parents didn't defeat my dream. It was a pipe dream at the time because, again, girls hockey wasn't in the Olympics. I didn't know that I could play in college. So they let me believe. They let me dream. I think that was one of the most important elements of, and we all know this, how you have to find it, which I was lucky I did, but then you need to be encouraged to stay in it. And one statistic I hate, but I use a lot, is girls drop out of sports twice the rate of boys at puberty. And that's not because girls suddenly don't like sports, like they do. They get pressure from society that, no, you should be thinking about a boyfriend or makeup or doing something that a girl should do, and not, oh, you play sports, that's amazing, because that's the default question to boys. Hey, what sports do you play? That isn't always the default question to girls. And so there's a lot of outside pressures in terms of starting a sport, especially a sport like hockey, which is tougher, right? Finding your a sport you love, and then staying in. I think coaches have an enormous influence, not only bringing you in and making you feel welcome and accepted, but ensuring that you have, again, a path. And when you see a young person, whether it's a boy or a girl, we all know this. It's those little things that keep you in the game. But think about it this way: it's so hard for a young girl in this sport to want to play. I mean, I was the only girl playing, and at first it was fine because I was a little kid. I didn't know the difference. You're out to lunch when you're that age. But at some point, I got cut from teams because I was a girl, or I got called names, or even the parents would yell at me. I had a lot of adversity, like a lot of young women do in this game. And I was lucky I had my parents and my coach specifically. So I give so much credit to the amazing people that were around me that encouraged me to stay, to kind of push through that time period. And then I was able to play in 4 Olympics and win gold medals, and get an education through that. I got into the Hockey Hall of Fame. I never thought that would happen. My life is a very different story because I had that opportunity.
So when I look around this room, it is predominantly males, but a lot of allies as well. And when you are coaching females, there are certain sensitivities that you need to keep in mind. What would you encourage those who are allies or wanting to coach or be a better coach to keep in mind?
Yeah, well, I call you, my nice term is manbassador, if you get the English translation. Manbassador, someone that, you could be coaching women's hockey, and again, I'm preaching to the choir here, but if you're coaching men's hockey, I like to be coached the same way. I work for the New York Rangers now. I know hockey. It's the same rules. It's the same game. There's no fundamental difference to me in how you coach. But the one thing is how it's received. My coach Ben Smith for many years on the national team used to say, "It's so weird, the women listen." Like, what do you mean? He's like, we are so responsive and attentive, I think, in some ways. So I would say, generally speaking, treat us the same, right? I honestly never wanted to be treated any differently. I was a hockey player. But if you do coach men's hockey, have you ever brought a female assistant along, as an example? Have you opened a door for that? Are there opportunities within your program, your organization, where you think about the women? Whether that's you're giving a presentation, make sure there's women's data included. Make sure even the pictures, I see this all the time, the presentations, it's only male hockey players. And when you're a female hockey player in the room, you feel you're always on the outside, you're always on the outside, you're always on the outside. So think about that. Like, you're constantly signaling whether it's ice time or when that ice time occurs. Maybe the women always get the late slot or the really early slot. How do you speak? Do you speak calmly? Do you use negative, derogatory words about women on the ice? I mean, women hear that. What are those little things you can do to make it just feel more inclusive? And that goes such a long way. I mean, those little signals you get all the time are part of the reason girls stop. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm just talking more from personal experience. Like, everyone can do something to make your environment just a little more inclusive.
And you've played at the highest caliber in the women's game. And now, as you mentioned, you're working with the NHL's New York Rangers. What are the folks there learning from you, and what can men's hockey learn from women's hockey?
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to speak too directly. Just hockey's hockey. It's a beautiful game. Again, I think men and women want to be a part of it, all the way from the general manager role to the coaching role to the participation role to the administrative side. And that's the world I want to see, is a world where, a great expression is, if you can see it, you can be it. We get more women in leadership roles, because what that does is, even if a young girl, like a young boy, doesn't turn out to be an Olympic hockey player, a world champion, maybe they want to go into administration, maybe they want to go into coaching, maybe they want to go into being an official. So that's where I think at the top, really creating more opportunities at the top, as well as on the participation side, sends a very strong visual signal to the next generation, and makes you, I think sends the signal to say, our game is welcome. We want this, we want our game to grow. And I think that's all I'm talking about at the end of the day, is growth. I spend a lot of time with my company, Sports Innovation Lab, looking at sports that want to grow, and they're raising money. They're spending money to grow their commercial side. They're actively investing in the grassroots. You could see what some of these organizations are doing to say, we want to be the best sport in the world. And that's my question to this sport. Do we want to be the best sport in the world? If we do, if we want to grow and continue to be visible, again, geographies, technology, and gender, those are, to me, the three core pillars, the fastest way to get there.
Yeah. And you're alluding to it, but hockey has traditionally been very homogenous in thought. And what you're doing with Sports Innovation Lab is you are disrupting an ecosystem. And in order for an ecosystem to grow, to find new muscles, you need to break a muscle as well in order for it to get stronger. So could you elaborate on some of the work that you're doing at Sports Innovation Lab to help grow the game in different markets?
Yeah, and I guess I'll relate that to women's sports, because, I can have an opinion, and you could be like, oh, that's interesting, Angela, thanks for your thoughts. What I realized is that doesn't always resonate. A lot of people think with their brain, not with their heart. They want the stats, they want the data. And so to complement sort of opinion and emotion, my company has spent a lot of time looking at the data, like the fan data, we basically use data in an objective way to grow sport into new markets. And if we just focus on the women's market here with this data, our data has shown that the world is hungry for women's sports. They want more of it. There's this pent-up demand. And if anyone have a daughter in the room, raise a hand. Daughters? All right. Your daughters would probably want to play hockey if you're in this room because they want to be like their dad. I guarantee you, if they felt there was a path for them. And maybe they already do play, which is great, but they might drop out before your son because they don't feel like there's a real path for them. And so those women, those young women, and young boys too, I have 2 boys, and they could care less about if they're watching men's or women's hockey. They just love hockey, which is great. I'm treating them, I'm raising them well. But my point is, the data shows that fans want women's sports. And if you build it, they will come. You have to invest. That's the tricky part. A lot of the world sees the investment as a cost. Like we're losing money, we're in the red. We lost X amount of dollars on the women's game this year. On the men's side, everyone sees that as an investment. They don't see that, oh no, we're investing for the future. And so there's this double standard in how we grow women's sports that those that get it are investing heavily. And you see data like, valuations for teams in some of the North American pro leagues now, or even a few years ago, you'd pay a couple $1 million for the rights. They're worth $150 million in like 3 years. The valuation of these teams are skyrocketing. Attendance, even the PWHL, the Women's Pro League in North America that just launched, there was an enormous amount of pent-up demand in the market, such that, these teams are selling out in 5 seconds. Literally, they're selling all of their tickets in 5 seconds. 18,000, 20,000, consistently selling out NHL arenas. This is women's hockey. So what that tells me, our data and what you're seeing, in terms of attendance or viewership, there's a market here. And I think part of that trajectory, and at least for the PWHL, is these young girls have had more visibility, more, they could be like Angela Ruggiero. They could look up to us and see us on TV, playing in the Worlds, playing in the Olympics. And so that's my vision for everywhere, is that we have multiple leagues that young girls can have that same aspiration that young boys do. They stay in the game, and the data suggests, again, I won't go into details, but there's a market here. Girls want the same things as your sons. Simple as that. They want to grow up to be an Olympian, an ice hockey player. And right now, I think the hardest thing is they're told that they shouldn't be. And so they just stop playing. And then and just think about what we're doing to society, by shutting off those dreams to half of the population.
So I had a question for the audience. How many of you are trying to actively create a change in your organizations to promote women's hockey? You can put your hand up.
We're the ambassadors. All right, I got 1. 2.
2.
3.
Who's trying their best to promote women's hockey in your organization? Okay.
Oh, I got 4. Oh, we got the women's table over here.
Yeah, I got a shy audience here. And when you are making a change, does it seem hard? Are you in an uncomfortable position sometimes? Keep your hand up. Yeah, I know you are. Yep. Yeah? So how do we get comfortable being uncomfortable, going into unknown territory?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you have to just say to yourself, like, why am I in this sport? Do I really want this sport to be for everyone? And if one of my favorite quotes in the world, Gandhi's quote, to be the change you wish to see in this world. And I look across the room and I think if every single person here did one thing when they went back home, just one thing, whether you just pat a girl on the back, that one girl that's in your organization, or maybe you're on the board of your organization and you said, maybe we should have one more female sitting around the table, helping us make decisions, or just getting her input. Maybe it's ice time. Maybe you're in charge of delving the ice time out in that local arena, and hey, we should make a slot for women. We should encourage more women to play. It's hard. And at the end of the day, to me, it's just awareness. Awareness when you're not being inclusive, and just doing one thing. Like, you can't change the world overnight. But to me, it's feeling inside that, knowing that you can. And to me, like, that's the message, is that every single person in this room can do one thing to make this game more inclusive, to encourage, again, that next generation. You know, again, it's asking that question. Like, if you did an audit of your club or your organization and said, how much ice time do women get compared to men? Where are we with participation compared to the boys? Where are we with leadership, right? That, to me, that's a big piece of it. Just having more female voices around the table that remind, because I don't think anyone's being malicious. I think it's more of just, oh, this is how we've always done things. And so it's trying to disrupt that train of thought of, oh yeah, I guess we did forget to put the women in the stats. Oh yeah, we should probably put a column in. Or, oh yeah, we forgot to, you know, go out of our way to do X, Y, and Z. To me, it's not trying to like boil the ocean. It's like, pick one little thing you can do, and you'll realize you can actually have a very positive effect. I mean, again, in my acceptance speech of the NHL, the Hall of Fame, I remember I was like, okay, who am I gonna thank? And the first person I thought of besides my family was my coach, who had to throw some elbows to get me on the ice sometimes, or, you know, went out of his way to help me, encourage me, even though he saw all the discrimination that was going on when I was a young person. And I just, again, I think back, my life would be literally different if I didn't have that positive person in my life.
Is there anything you would have done differently looking back at your journey?
It's, you know, I like that I had struggles at times, because I learned from it. I think you know, a lot of female hockey players, once they get to the top, they look back fondly of all the moments where they had to struggle, because I think it sort of defined you. So it would have been great if I had a pro league and all of these other opportunities that I think this generation has. What would I have done differently? It's a hard question, because I tend to think those were all growing opportunities for me.
Well, I think when you face so much adversity too, this strong bones in you develop. You're ready to take on anything at any moment, you know, as you carry on with your journey. And with coaching, it's a lot of preparation as well. So what were you not prepared for in your journey, despite having gone through so many hurdles early on?
What was I not prepared for? Again, that's a lot. But what I learned as an athlete is to just still walk through that door and take that risk and try to prepare, and that it's okay to fail. And that, again, like all the lessons I learned help me now in the real world. You know, every athlete has their first career is hockey, and you learn the game. Your second career is, you know, you got to get a job, you got to do something else. And so it's hard to answer that question, because I really see all the times I failed or got cut or called names or told I couldn't as milestones in my life, where, guess I face that as an entrepreneur now. You know, I face that in the boardroom now. I face that, and it's on some ways made me fearless, because I expect to fail. I expect adversity. I go into those rooms, you know, fired up. And it's that grit that I learned, I think, as an athlete that I carry with me. So I don't know if there's one moment. I know you keep pushing me.
It's a culmination is what we are hearing. So a coach's job is to coach a player, but at the end of the day, it's a person as well. How can coaches better prepare their players for life after hockey?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. As a female hockey player, you know you're going to have a life after hockey. You're not going to make millions of dollars and retire playing golf and have, you know, not that every male athlete does that, but you at least I knew I had to go get an education, and I was going to have a career post-playing days from a young age, and I was always thinking about that. So one thing that my coach did, while focusing me on the ice, also treated me as a human being and allowed me to have some balance off the ice, which I think at times is extremely hard. If you think about how many games players play now and the intensity of training even in the off season, you know, understanding that at your core, you're a developing person, and giving just athletes a little glimpse of what it's like outside of the doors of the hockey arena. Because I think having that, you know, you could get injured any day, you could want to retire any day, or you're going to have to get a job one day. And I think, to me, the best coaches in the world, again, give you a little, you know, try to give you a little bit of balance as best as you can while still being hyper competitive. I mean, I was so competitive. I wanted to win every game. I wanted to win every practice, every drill, everything in the weight room. I mean, I was super competitive, but you know, when I needed to take a week off or a day off, or I needed something else outside of hockey, I think to me that was the greatest gift I got from my coach.
So winning a gold medal is very rewarding. Being in the Hockey Hall of Fame is very rewarding. But what do you get that same feeling from now outside of hockey? How do you feel rewarded now, given everything that you're doing?
I love to see when our game grows. I love to see when sports thrives. I mean, that's basically what I've done since I retired. My company is all about enabling organizations to grow, whether that's on the tech side, on the fan side, or the participation side. So I think sports is at a, you know, it's at an inflection point. Young people are playing video games. Young people are, we're in the entertainment economy where they're getting pulled, they're scrolling all day, right? And to me, you know, again, thinking about how do we, as a sport, ensure that, again, kids sign up and they play and they get that experience that we all get. And so my post-playing days have been all about, you know, enabling organizations to thrive and to do things differently. I mean, the only way to thrive in today's economy is to do things differently. It's just, it's like you need to disrupt yourself, just like an athlete who, you're playing, you know, I'm sure you have a player on your team that, the best player on their team, what do they do? And they're always thinking about how they can be one degree better the next day. And the same thing goes for organizations. How do you do that? And so that's really what I've focused on since I retired. I got my MBA. I've been focused more on the business side. I'm obviously back in the game now, but it's like, how do you disrupt yourself? How do you enable those around you to disrupt themselves, including on the ice? And, you know, it's a sense of urgency for wanting to get better.
Well, we have a couple of minutes left, so I do want to open it up to the audience for questions, because we've been talking here for a little bit, but I'm sure we've got your curiosity. So perhaps we can start with my friends to that table over there. Do we have a mic to go around? Yeah? And tomorrow I will be going table to table asking all of you questions to make sure you're paying attention.
Do you have any questions, please?
Thanks a lot, you two. I think over time, Angela, you've experienced so many variety of experiences, activities, whether it's business, boards, playing. What would be your suggestion? You talked about opening doors for people, and why would the majority of these people in this room want to coach women's hockey? Why would you tell them to jump ship, leave the men's game, come to the women's game?
Who's going to jump ship? You know, because I played boys hockey and obviously women's hockey. The women's game is very pure, I think, at the end of the day. Everyone that plays genuinely has a love for the game. Most women that play, in my opinion, aren't doing it for the fame and fortune, because there's so much fortune at the end of the road. They love hockey. So you have these purists in our game, and all the staff that's around. You know, really just live and breathe for the game. And yes, there are more opportunities for scholarships and playing in the Olympics, and there's obviously more of a professional track here. But to answer your question, we generally want to get better, and we're going to listen to every single thing that comes out of your mouth as a coach. We're going to respect you. We're going to look up to you. And not to say that doesn't happen on the men's side. Like, I can only speak from the women's side of the game. But you have this, I think women collectively can be extremely, extremely powerful. We can check our egos at the door. We can work as one. It's actually really beautiful. I think in some ways women can achieve this much collectively, and men can maybe, this is my theory, be somewhere around here because we have this EQ thing. I think at the same time, women could be more detrimental at moments. But I've played on teams where everyone checked their ego at the door. We listened to everything our coach said, and we executed flawlessly. And those are the times we were champions. So yeah, it would be a big jump if you've only been in the men's game, but you would get respect on day one, and you'd have a group of young people dying for your every word and mentorship. At the end of the day, I think that's all it is mentorship. And that could be on the coach's side too. Again, bringing more women into your organization. If you're in, I'm with the Rangers, there aren't a lot of women around the room, but I'm bringing my hockey sense to the game. And so I think, don't think of the gender, think of, again, what the palette of experiences that some of these coaches or athletes have as you're building your own internal organization.
We have questions from Slido. The first one, why do women not play body contact and without half visors?
Yeah, good question. There was checking in 1990. The IIHF changed the rules in 92. I don't know why. Someone in the room might. I loved checking growing up. I grew up playing boys hockey. I loved it. And then I had to figure out how to play without checking and it's actually more skilled. You have to really angle the right way. And if you hit someone against the boards, you got to hold them up. You know that, Mel, right? So they don't drop down and then you get called. So I was a very physical athlete growing up. I loved hitting and would have loved to play checking as an adult, to be honest. But the game's changed so much since they eliminated that rule in 92. I'm on the board of World Rugby. There's the same exact rules. And so that's actually a question I always ask. Why do we have different rules? Most girls now, pretty much all girls, have grown up playing non-contact, non-checking, but with contact. And they prefer that because it's more of a pure style game. It's more skill-based. It's not just the biggest kid on the ice that can run you over. It encourages girls to play because their parents might think of that. The visors, I actually wouldn't want to put a visor on because I want my teeth. So maybe the men want to put their full cage on at some point and protect their teeth, but the visor's a different story. But the checking, again, it's a good, healthy debate. I'm on the athletes commission here on the IIHF, and we talk about that occasionally. Should the women's game have checking? Food for thought.
Next question for Angela. You have played in many big tournaments and pressure moments. What is the best quality in a female team as a group that maybe the males are missing?
I think I alluded to it before, that the best women's teams, everyone has an ego, myself included, but when you can check your ego at the door, which women can do more easily, I think, right? Show of hands, pretty much. So, oh my God, the power of a team. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to build, is a team. And to have a true team, you need to figure out, am I the first line center, or am I the bench warmer, fourth line scrapper? Am I going to get to play the power play, or am I our PK specialist? So all of that requires you to be aware of your ego. And I think sometimes women, not all women, but I think generally speaking, that's something, that team cohesiveness, when you can find it and nurture that as a coach, I think it's quicker to get there than on the men's side. And again, I'm generalizing here, but we've all played for excellent teams where we're you can do that both on the men's and the women's side, and that's the best, purest game of hockey, because you're moving the puck and you're selfless and you're just rolling. But generally speaking, it's the same game. That's why some of these questions are really interesting. Like, it's the same game. We love it. The blue line doesn't move, right? I mean, yeah, checking is the anomaly here. I played professional men's hockey in North America. I was the first woman non-goalie to play in a pro men's game in the Central Hockey League with my brother, actually. And I remember lining up, and there's all these cameras, and everyone's asking me, "Are you nervous?" And I'm like, it's the same game. I've played this game since I was a kid. Again, the rules haven't changed. Yes, the pace is higher, like any rookie. But yeah, when you think about women's hockey, don't think other, think same. Start thinking this is the same game. It's the same young, hungry athletes that are just dying to learn from you.
Next question. Until what age do girls have to train and play with boys? And when to start training and play only with girls?
I think that's an individual answer. I probably would have played through high school with the boys. Usually at puberty is when you see that split, because the boys get bigger and the girls don't want to get crushed if they don't grow at the same rate. I actually grew quicker than the boys, so when checking introduced, I was like, yeah. And I was knocking the boys over, and my dad was very proud of me. And then the boys caught up, and then I switched over to girls. See you later. So I think it's an individual choice. I think in generally what we're seeing in the States, the US, where girls have the option of boys and girls, is around 12, 14 at the latest, I'd say. Because they have both options, I'd say 12-ish. But younger than 12, like, they're the same, like, they haven't hit puberty. There's no physical difference at all. If anything, the girls are actually more coordinated and smarter. They kind of pick it up quicker, and then the boys catch up. And then puberty obviously completely changes that. But I think it's an individual. If you have a young woman in your organization and all they have is boys hockey, they're going to stay in boys hockey. But if they have the option to play girls, they might want that camaraderie, that locker room, all that team stuff that really is such an important part of hockey.
Next question. When we need make a different training for women's off-ice conditioning training, if we have boys and girls together?
Again, no. I think girls and boys can train together off the ice. The locker room situation, obviously, I think has to be different. I mean, I trained with NHL guys in the summertime before the Olympics. It made me better. It made them better. I work for Chris Drury now, case in point, who's the New York Rangers president, GM. We trained together before the 2010 Olympics. So I think at the end of the day, don't think, you might have to adjust the weights. Okay, if you have a guy coming in, pumping big, putting lots of plates on, okay, take the plates off, adjust. But the more you can just see us as hockey players, like, we're just hockey players that just want the opportunity. We just want to be treated the same. You don't have to always split and have all the women over here and the men over here. And sometimes when you do that, the women's side actually doesn't get the same resources and support. And so if you're building an off-ice training program, to me, it's the same. It might be, again, weight, there might be differences in the weights, but the core fundamentals of developing an athlete apply equally.
How you manage to keep players in hockey after pregnancy?
Again, I think that's an individual decision, but in women's sports, since this is a women's sports panel, more and more female athletes are staying in the game. Their organizations are creating maternity policies, just like any work policy. So sports is different because you got to get back to work quicker. It's harder. Babysitting. Can you create a policy to help with the child care? Can you help, physical therapy? Can you make sure there's enhanced physical therapy or one-on-one physical therapy for that individual? Can you you know, a lot of times it's because it's never been done before. Women will just retire and have start their families versus seeing that, oh, Jenny Potter, someone in my organization, she was 22. She came back and played, and we were like, wow, that's amazing. It set the tone for, you know, not for another 10 years, but this is one of those situations where you have to have a pregnancy policy. And not just they're allowed to come back, but how are we gonna help them get back? What are the resources we can put in place, again, to send that message? But it's possible. Girls, you're actually stronger. You get a dose of, you know, hormones that actually make you stronger after pregnancy. So don't think of it as like you have to retire. It's actually proven now that you can come back and play. And look at women's football, look at volleyball. There's all these sports out there that it's normalized now.
Do you think the aggressive way of coaching as Tortora or Mike Keenan and many more would work even in women's hockey?
Well, I would ask that about men's hockey. I think it's the same question. Again, we're hockey players. If you agree that that's the way to coach, then okay, you might get some pushback on both the men's and the women's side. It's this transition we're seeing in coaching is like, are we doing more for sports psychology? Are we doing more to really enhance the whole person? To me, that's like back to your question of like traditional style of coaching versus these younger athletes and what do they need? And so again, I would go back that question. Don't think of like girls as like fragile flowers that can't be talked to and yelled at. Believe me, I got yelled at a lot. That's a coaching question, a philosophy on how do we develop young people versus how do we treat women. Treat us the same. If the end of this conference, you have that magic bullet on how to develop the next generation of talent, just bring that blueprint to the women's game because it's the same philosophy in my opinion.
Next question, what do you think is the most important next step we should be considering in terms of the growth of games? PWHL, grassroots level, we are looking at these days.
I would love to see more countries develop the women's game. I loved battling Canada and Finland and Sweden, and there were a number of countries that were always at the top on the women's side. I would love to have the Chinas, the Russias, the Czech. I would love to have more countries that have a blueprint of success in hockey, bring it to the women's game. Because hockey, when you win on the men's side, to me what that says, you understand hockey, you can develop players, you can develop talent, you have capital to invest. If you just took that and applied it to the women's side, you're gonna win a medal in 4 to 8 years, guaranteed, because you know the game. It's harder for geographies that don't know the sport that are developing, but maybe there's an opportunity to have a great women's team quicker than a men's team. So for me, grassroots is the most important. How do we grow our baseline? The geography question. I think the PWHL is absolutely fantastic. It's the new women's league in the US. There are other women's leagues that exist, but if you can make a sustained living post-college, because a lot of players actually come to the States to play in the NCAA system, then we can continue to develop at the elite level. So if there's 1, 2, 3 pro leagues where you can make a living and continue to play into your 30s like you see on the men's side, the talent will get better and better and better. But again, a lot of players, their growth is stunted because they have nowhere to play once they graduate from college. Or maybe it's just their national team and they don't have the same volume of games to really develop. So I'd say, whoever wrote this question, it's perfect. Grassroots, if you have a history of knowing the game, like you have the potential to have a medal on the women's side fairly quickly, and on the pro side, it allows our best players in the world to continue to play, and not to mention create an amazing year-round platform to send that inspiration back into the grassroots. It's great when the Worlds are on TV or the Olympics are on TV, but if you don't see women playing hockey on a consistent basis, you're less likely to get the parents and the coaches and the kids to say, sign me up. And so that's also why I think the PWHL or pro leagues will help our game. It's the exposure.
It was the last question and answer. Thank you very much. Angela
Thank you.
Ruggiero and Amrit Gill, thank you for the discussion. Now we have 14 minutes break. Please check the time and be back at 10:15. And we're going to continue with the next panel. And please don't forget to